In a forgotten village, where the wind carried more dust than dreams, a little girl named Champa dared to plant hope. Let's start. Nestled amidst the arid plains of Rajasthan, the village of Ranipur bore the weight of ancient customs and the withering soil. Here tradition was law and silence was complicit. It was not the absence of rain that plagued the land, but the hunting absence of daughters. Champa entered the world not with fanfare, but under a veil of disappointment. Her father averted his gaze. Her mother wept quietly, but her Dadaji, a withered man with calloused hands and a soft soul, smiled. He said, "This child will not wilt like others. She will bloom where none dared to grow." From an early age, Champa questioned what others accepted. She observed the withered trees and empty classrooms. She noticed that joy was reserved for sons. At the age of 10, she asked, "Why do trees and girls vanish from our village?" Her grandfather answered, "Because both are unvalued until one day people realize they cannot live without them." That evening, he gifted her a neem sapling, a symbol of resilience. "Plant it," he whispered, "not just in soil, but in their minds." With unwavering resolve, Champa began her solitary campaign. For every girl born, she planted a tree, regardless of whether the family rejoiced or recoiled. What can a girl and a sapling change? But Champa continued. Neem, Peepal, Amaltas, and Gulmohar soon adorned the village paths like silent sentinels of change. She painted slogans on walls, wrote poems on leaves, and left them at doorsteps. Nurture daughters, nourish the earth. A tree for her name, a future reclaimed. Years passed, the trees grew tall, their roots drinking from the same dry earth that once refused to give, and alongside them, so did the girls. The village school reopened. Girls began attending, their fingers inked with knowledge instead of kitchen soot. Some families still resisted, but their protests grew quieter as their fields grew greener. The shade of trees cooled tempers and changed minds. The neem that Champa planted outside the panchayat bloomed fast. It stood as a monument not just of green but of grit. By the time Champa turned 18, the village was no longer barren. It echoed with laughter, rustling leaves, and the shuffle of school bags. Visitors came from cities to see the village that grew girls and green. Journalists wrote, ministers praised, but Champa remained grounded. She always said, "This is not my story. It belongs to every girl who was not uprooted." And so the forest grew not just in the soil but in the spirit of the people. They called it Champa One, the forest of Champa, a forest born of rebellion, watered with hope and rooted in courage. Years later, Champa stood at the edge of her forest, now a sanctuary of dreams. Bird song replaced silence, daughters replaced doubt. She now trained other girls to plant, to speak, to lead. They roar confidence like sunlight and courage like soil under their feet. One little girl once asked, "Did the trees really change everything?" Champa smiled, her fingers brushing the bark of the oldest neem. "No," she said, "we did. The trees just grew with us." And somewhere deep in the forest, a new sapling sprouted. Another girl had been born. The cycle continued. The dream lived on. The end, but only for now.